This birthday cake pop-up is fairly simple to make. And what you'll need to do is obviously print out the parts, the pop-out parts first of all. So I've got the sides of the cakes, the top, the lifting mechanism, and then we've also got the cake numbers which you can put on there, as well as the base as well. So if you print those elements out, the next thing to do now is to go ahead and cut all the bits out, and then we'll look to see how we actually apply those and turn it into our 3D pop-up cake. I've printed out the cover on one side of my 180 GSM card. I've put the inside part down and then the guidelines over printed on there as well, so that I can now see where to put the actual elements when I've made them up. So that's the base of the card. You'll need to just do that obviously to prepare ready for the pop-up. Then we need the various parts, and I'm going to start off with the sides of the cake. On the one that you've got, these inner parts will be text editable, and on this one I've just kept it plain for the moment. So what I've done is simply cut out the elements and then just folded the tabs here and cut out the two end ones there, and the same again on the other side. That's an identical piece, and you'll notice that the piping matches. So it really doesn't matter which way round you do it. Obviously you don't go tab to tab, as it were. Our next task is to now glue these. So on the two tabs here I'm going to put the glue, and I'll put that on both sides while I've got that out. There and there. And it's simply a case of really sticking these two halves together. So if I put one there and one like so, I'll just line that tab up down that end there and press down, and then these tabs on the inside there just come along and glue there, and there we go. Just give them a little squeeze from the inside. Now this should go quite nicely, but if you do end up with a slight white line, remember you can always come along with a brown felt tip pen or something and just darken those lines up if you want to. Just that'll just take it away if you do get a little bit of line in there. And there we go. Now, in order to get this a little bit more round, you can see that it's sitting like this, but we want to have it more cake shaped. What you can do is use a pencil, and if you just pop it in there, and be careful of these side tabs here, but just pull it through and up, it just begins to stretch the paper, and you can see it makes it far more rounded. This is a common sort of technique used to put a curl or a twist in paper, and if you can spend a little bit of time, you can see already now that that's much rounder. A pinch point, a problem point if there's such a thing there being, is really these corners here, and you'll see I've kept those tabs as light as possible, as it were, but they're still allowing for this, I'm afraid, to just come slightly out of the circular shape. But not to worry, if you just manipulate that and twist it a little bit and weaken it off, you begin to see now that we can actually create a much more rounded shape. And there we go. Now that's obviously going to be squashed flat, but as it comes out, it creates a natural spring in the shape there. So that's a handy technique to do. So the next thing to do now is look at our pop-up support, and you can see here I've cut this one out. What we need to do is simply crease and score along the lines here, the dotted lines, and then cut along the red one here. So the gluing part initially is on this long part here. So if you think of it like a pair of legs, what I want you to do is just run your glue along here. Don't bother with the tabs yet, just that square there, and then fold it in half. Then those two tabs will come away. They're going to glue onto the base. This comes down like so and just sits in onto our cake. So that's one of the elements we're going to have to stick down. So I think really the next stage now is to look at the base and how the cake applies to it, and then our lifting mechanism. I've got the base here, and that's, you can see, clearly marked out with the guidelines. We've got a centre line here, so we need to now score this piece of paper, just run a line along that length of the paper, though that doesn't stretch to the end, and that so it can't be seen. That's part will be hidden underneath the base of the cake, and fold that over. This is now going to be the main part of the card, and as you can see, I've already put the front on there. So there we go, running nice and central along there. And obviously the next part we can do is put the cake on. You can see the tabs here and how they line up, and we're also going to put the central lift mechanism in. But before I do that, I'd just like to come back to the lid of the cake and show you how we put the numbers in on that. So if I move that to one side and show you here, again, this is already pre-cut out. A couple of things to note: we've got some red cut lines here and a score line there. So again, the first thing I want to do really is just score along there and just fold that over. Now I find, because the cake lid has to move in and out, and we want it when it opens to be as flat as possible, it is worth just folding it both ways, just so that the crease becomes what I call very light here, i.e. that it folds either direction quite nicely, so as it comes up it's not so tight that it doesn't want to fully open, because we're creating the illusion at the top of the cake here, and as much help as we can give it as possible, better. And of course there is going to be what I call the lifting mechanism underneath here. Okay, so that's that part dealt with. Now you'll notice that we've got two red score lines, two red cut lines here. What I'm going to do is be actually feeding some mechanisms through that. Now what I'd like to do, as we've done if you've made the butterfly, is just cut this out, but just take a little slither out of it, because we've got a mechanism that pops up through here, and I just find that if you make this hole slightly bigger, it just allows for the mechanism to slide a little bit more easily, i.e. the card that's coming up through has got a little what I call room to breathe, so it's not under too much pressure. Okay, so that's that part there. Now the bit that goes on there, and here I've got two of the cakes, which in your version you'll have numbers on there, and I'm just using the cakes as they are. We need to put that on a mechanism, and I want to build this bit first before I put the lid on the cake. So the next thing to do is to come back, and you'll find on your sheet there was a small mechanism here as well. Again, cut that out, fold the lines and score it, and put some nice creases in there. Just fold it like so. Okay, we've got our lift mechanism here for the candles on the cake. Now what I want to do is show you how we put this together. It's an unusual little mechanism, but it's going to keep everything upright. So two dobs of glue just about in the middle there. Now I'm going to stick the cakes on. Now you will have these double-sided, i.e. that you can stick them over so that you can see one on each side. But for the purpose of this, to explain it, I'm just printed on one side. So the main side with the image here is just going to go down onto there and stick just above, and I'll do the same on the other side here. That just holds on, so if I pull it back we can see where the baseline is there. That's the top of the image. Now this is going to slot into the card, and what it will do is create a vertical lift when it comes through. So the next step is just to feed that through here like so. And you can see now how the mechanism works. Once that card, if I just tilt it to the side there, once that's opened, that will pull these up so they sit up vertically, and on yours you'll have the numbers on there. So we now need to glue that, and you can see on this side here, if I just again put my glue tabs on there. So if I can show you now from the top, how we glue it is really just hold it flat, stick it down. You can see this is slotting in, I'm lining it up there, and those tabs as it sits vertically just sit either side of our halfway line, and then that sits nicely there, so when the cake folds that will come over like so, and again a little bit of squeeze just to hold it into position there. And we can see again how that works. Lots of elements all ready to stick down, and the cake's going to come together quite quickly. First thing to do now is we've got two flaps either side here. These are what I call our guideline ones, so a little bit of glue on there to hold that down, some more on there as well, and that acts as our alignment for the cake. So that's the top part of the cake there, and then we can put these down on the base at that point. Now as those go down, so that will stick onto there. So the next thing to do, if I can show you, those two act as our guide points, so a little bit of glue onto there. Now there's a lot of pull on this particular mechanism, so you can make sure that works well, and you can see now I'm just going to line up my piece of cake top there, put that on and stick that on to that point. And now what I'd like to do is to actually stick this one here on to that one there, and I'm just going to kind of roll the cake over, as it were, doing a bit at a time. These all line up, so again put that over there, that will cover it, and that's that part of the base of the cake. Now, do you remember the lift mechanism we made? Well, this is where it comes into place. So what we're going to do now is start to glue the base here and onto that one there. You see, I'm just going to work on this side first. So that now sits across the center line, because that will come up vertically, so we want that nice and evenly on there, and this mechanism just tilts over and then sits down like so onto that point there. Let me just tip that up sideways to show you. Can you see what we've done? We just created a square. It's looped over, come down and sits there, and this bit is what we're going to stick the top of the cake on to as well. So let's glue it now. I've just pulled it over, and you can see what I'm going to do now is just simply push that over to that side there, and I'm going to pull this piece of cake in to sit on top of it. This looks a little bit more complicated than it is, and if I show you upside down here, so I've pushed that over, that part of the cake is ready to sit on there. Now while we've got that, we can glue, I'm sorry this is difficult to see, but I'm going to show you now. Let's put that up there. I'm going to glue this part to the top of the cake, and we're going to just slowly roll this one over. So some glue on there, that half goes over there, and that sits now on to our cake, which will just sit down at that point like so. And you can see now how this is all already coming together. Oh, it's fantastic. I love watching that part happen. So while we've got that bit there, let's glue this part on, and then we can come over and glue that one as well and just work our way along. So a bit of glue on here. It's on that section there, that bit of leg sits there. Now all of this mechanism now needs to come down and glue on the last final two tabs that we've got there. Now this is the tricky bit, because you've got everything covered up, and there's a number of ways doing it really, but we're going to just try the simplest, and that's to simply come along now, pre-glue it and just force that down, as it were. So if I just show you, I'll put my glue on there and on here as well, in anticipation of the side of the cake. Now I find it helps to have either your bone tool or a knife or something, because I'm going to just push through. Now let me show you. Right, first of all, this, in theory, another way, we've got that there, we can just slide this over. We can push it down, or we can go, now make sure that's glue. Can you see that's come away? Plenty of glue on here, because once this is done, it's done. Those line up there. Now I think probably the easiest way is just to fold this over like so, and there we go. We can see it makes for a fantastic pop-up here. The candles stick up and we get this lovely circular chocolate cake. A fantastic card, I think, for anyone to receive. As you can see, it really isn't too tricky to make either.